This is the ranking of all the albums.
This is a very important and awesome EP that's arguably the start of this band, but definitely the start of another band. Considering one thing I'm later including, which has nothing to do with Buzzcocks, but everything to do with the Buzzcocks, maybe this should go in, but it just doesn't feel right. For further articulation, you can wait for the Buzzcocks episode I will not make. I'm not that much into them. So looking at the actual subscription, Magazine had one of those turn of the 80s careers where it starts out punky and then they've got to try and fit in an 80s scene and they fail to fit in an 80s scene. I think this first album is a massive influence, whether directly or indirectly, on my music and a lot of the music I enjoy. Throughout Howard's career, you can see a brilliant combination of David Bowie kind of vibe and the kind of vibe that David Bowie was really into but could never quite be outsider artists. If we're calling this post-punk, it's post one particular punk band and it carries their energy forward, but just with more smarts behind it. Buzzcocks is also smart, but they want it to be enjoyed, and Magazine are happy being obscure, which I happen to enjoy. Shot by both sides. That damn track is so singular that it's easy to accidentally forget the rest of the album. Then knock it off the playback and the rest is full of highlights too. The highlights pour out. Despite a more pondersome pace, it's still punk, just punk with mental issues, which maybe all punk is, but these ones are introverted, paranoid, creeping, so it's more relatable. With the rapid-fire releases of the 70s career now reissued in this compact disc case with just very unappealing design. A Magazine doing something ironic about publishing themselves as a product? Oddly, this one's a bit of a miss. A kind of more sedentary pace just comes across a bit slovenly, doesn't support what Magazine ought to be. Second hand, it's second rate, it's compact price, it's compact quality. It's still a tasty dollop of Magazine, and the 70s Sonics are superior to the next few. It just doesn't host any of their highlights. It's got good bits, but some stinky bits where it capitulates to prog but not progress. And hey, the others don't have stinky bits. Maybe they were saving up for this one. They've really brought it all back here. One disadvantage that comes in when the third digit of the artist ticks over into 8 is that now the drums sound shit. But the songs pull it up for that. This is Magazine with their formula, functioning just as they should and delivering. A funkier Magazine is emerging at this point, if only the drums could support it. A faster pace brings out their strengths more, an itchy energy for their easily distracted vibe, and many of their best songs are here if you squint. It's going on the top, and it could remain there if the production were better. Maybe I need a remaster with proper drums. Yeah, I'm comparing some remasters to some non-remasters. Rank the albums is short for rank the albums, considering only the exact CDs in my collection, except when I decide to do something different. Less catchy song, that. Do look beyond the album, some great tracks there. Special mention to the song Upside Down for being fucking awful. It's always sweet when a good band does just one of those for variety. Online consensus suggests that this one was a misstep, a goof, a band falling apart and fulfilling their contract with shitty last few songs. So I trusted the consensus and took a while to get around to it, didn't really consider getting around to it till I thought, let's rank the albums. Tried it, and what are they on about? This is great. Maybe their hearts weren't in it at this point, but their talents were. This reliable Magazine making 80s pop, being a bit more keyboard-led, offering new ideas, shaking up their sound a bit, and sounding like a band who could have gone on. They didn't. It's still a follow down, but one to their best work, so it rides that wave reasonably. Again, if the production were more pleasant, it could end up higher up. The more keyboard-oriented sound covers a glaring loss in guitarist, but is worth it for the one album. It brings new character, but the vocals are barely there, sometimes seeming intentionally whispered, often just nearly missing through bad production choices. Unlike earlier albums, the music couldn't stand so well without the vocals, so that's the injury to this one. So if I'm actually stalking Howard in this video, and just to be clear, I am, that brings me to the solo album. And it's good. I don't know if his, identity could just no longer be contained in magazine. I don't know exactly how all that stuff worked, but it's a good solo album. The music's a more standard post-punk we could interchange with other bands of the time, but awesome bands. By being just a bit less his own thing, this Crash Test Dummy has come into his own. It brings the adjective good out, clearly ahead of odd, without losing sight of odd. Again, in the format of albums around this time, there's one obvious massive catchy single than the other bits. The quality of that track does dominate the rest here, but not entirely. If you eliminate it in a couple of listens, then you realize the strength of the rest. You can even repeat that whittle a few times, put the first half on, and then find which track you're still humming and skip that one next time. Second side is less immediately rewarding and less ultimately rewarding. Now, a different band name credited to Devoto and a different name that will come up again later. This very much sounds like its era, and in this definition they're no longer making the trends but arguably just following them. And they're still good at it. There's a nice creative range to this, a willingness to try a variety of stuff. Luxuria ain't the post-punk magazine founded, but it's the alt-rock that grew from that, with power chord crunch and automated drums and bass. It's a lot less embarrassing than most late 80s rock, and a rare example of the mechanical sounds coming across as a feature rather than a flaw. Good, but not particularly exceptional or memorable. A second Luxuria album broadens the range of ideas yet further. These two kind of come across as the odd middle era curios, which, considering there's another two odd middle era curios after and before them, it's a career full of being odd curios, really. These are the oddest, most curious curios. Some of it really works, but some is just a bit beyond credibility, in my opinion. Howard's idiosyncratic way of singing, which is a perk throughout the career, the way he plays with melody and the idea that he might ever respect a melody and even plays with words and meaning is one of the headline reasons the magazine is so awesome, but it has the potential to be excruciating, and it steps the closest here. It's scratchier and patchier, a bigger range of material but not satisfying. Then a surprise collaboration named after a film character named after these two men. I don't know if it was named after in that sense, but it was named after chronologically, so I can still say that. In different videos in this series, I've had a look at Relaxed Muscle and Carfax, and this is quite a similar thing going on here. It's two successful, creative, male British musicians just deciding to dick around. They've had their things that were popular, and this is still their career, and they can entertain themselves. You would call it experimental, but the experiment is learning how to use early 2000s software. So this carries that very scrappy vibe of turn of the millennium bedroom digital music. Howard is generally on the vocals, and from what I can tell, probably lyrics too, and that's a reassuring thing in this career. It's great to hear him. Without being all that important itself, it was never trying to be all that important, and it will still impress on occasional listens. Then there's a dignified return of the name magazine. There's a bit of sleight of hand with the lineup here, sleight of band, because the presence of Noko means you could also call this a Luxuria album. You know, pause. Of course you gotta replace a dead guy. It's not a deceptive reunion. I won't cut the phrase sleight of band, but that's what you get when I don't script stuff. Coming back from a late 70s of being clever chancers with cocked eyebrows to a 2011 of just being really accomplished, funky musicians. There's a willfully disgusting sex song that you'll have to cringe your way through, but at least that's what they want you to do. Though it's removed from the era when magazine had a proper cultural footprint, this is easily their most musically virtuous album, and I think there's a strong argument for saying it's literally their best, and that's an argument I'm making right here. It's tight jam rock. Howard really suits being an older man. Like, he was basically an older man who was too young for a few decades there. It's just thoroughly this vibe of curmudgeonly meta existentialism that Maxim was always supposed to be, but now they're not in a late 70s schedule of pumping out an album every year. They've just made the most honed product of it.